Visiting with Ouachita Athletic Director David Sharp. Coach, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Chris. Glad to be here.
I want to get into regional rankings in the way of football as we come upon the final 3 weeks of the season, which sounds crazy to say, as we're already in week 8, 9 of the football season. I want to get into the regional rankings, but before that, it's been a busy semester. It always is a busy semester. There's lots of stuff in the way of facilities, successes of teams, but on the facilities front, it's been an exciting semester with the Hickenbotham Family Track and Field Complex, Doddridge Field dedication in the indoor complex, Cluck Benson Field, the locker room, just all kinds of, and probably some things I've missed as well, but a lot of progress in the way of facilities in this fall semester.
Yeah, it's been a busy summer, Chris, and in several sports and some that people don't know about, like they've remodeled completely our women's basketball dressing room. Coach Kylie Hill and took some funding and that he raised and they did that for their girls. So it's something that's not in the spotlight like some of these others, but it's something that's being done for our student athletes. So I mean there are so many things going with first of all the track and the family, the Hickenbotham family, and everything that's going on there. We're just so thankful to him and such a fine and true gentleman he is, and a great friend to Ouachita and Ouachita Athletics. So thankful for that. With the track, should be complete here in the next month, I think, and so we're excited about that. And then of course. You mentioned Doddridge Field. When we started working on this about a year ago on some of the facilities with football, and we needed new turf in there, and so we were able to do that. Nathaniel Doddridge, who played for Coach Knight back in the early 2000s, he stepped up, and so a couple of weeks ago we had a little dedication in there the morning of homecoming. That made homecoming day just a crazy day, and but had a really special ceremony with him and his family and the coaching staff, and really good. And then you mentioned Cluck Benson Field, and of course we changed the name to that, and of course we had some other donors with the football facility, the football field itself, but Dr. Cluck stepped up when we needed him to step up, Dr. Cluck and Debbie, and we were able to complete some things there, and it definitely merited having his name put on that field, and so we were able to recognize he and Debbie at the homecoming game, along with we recognized Nathaniel and his family also at halftime after the ceremony that morning. And so and then of course the locker room at All Care Fieldhouse, and we put that into motion back in the spring and talking about that, and then we had a donor step forward, a teammate of mine, a good friend of mine, Tab Turner, that stepped forward and wanted to recognize a couple of our fallen teammates, two that have passed on, and in William Miller and Ezekiel Vaughn. And so we were able to have a nice ceremony with Vicki Vaughn, as Ezekiel's wife, and some of her family. And then William Miller's older sister Janie and some of their family were here, and we just had a special time over there. The Harding game, and that afternoon, about 3 hours before kickoff, and it was special. And then we recognized them at halftime. But with all of those things there, just a lot of improvement in a lot of things. So a lot of going on. Excited about that, and then we move on to the next one from there.
That's right. It never stops. I guess kind of a byproduct of that, and what I thought of this when I saw the Doddridge family recognized at halftime. Got to come out of my little cubby hole there in the trailer sometime in the second half and saw a bunch of his former teammates that came back to campus and who had not been to campus in a long time. Also with William Miller and Zeke Vaughn, a lot in the track facility, those alums come back to campus and they're able to see what's going on and hopefully get them kind of re-involved in campus as well, and whatever group they were involved with when they were here.
Well, I think it's very good spotting all of that, Chris, because when people see some things going on, they always say success breeds success, and so the fact that we've been able to improve a lot of these facilities, alumni come back and they go, wow, this is awesome. And they want to get involved. And then that's, from there you go from there. And we had a lot of former track guys here at Hall of Fame. I mean, the homecoming weekend they had a reception, and of course there's not a lot of female track alumni yet because we just started. But so most of our alumni are males. But that time will come with that. But so I think especially people that haven't been on campus in 15 years or longer, they come back and they go, wow. Right. And I don't see it necessarily, but they do.
Right. Had a guy I was in school with came back because one of his classmates' son is on the football team. He said the last time he was at a football game was when Dusty Bonner was playing for Valdosta State. And we know how long that's been, 19 years, almost 20 years. Yeah. And he's like, I came back and it's like, man, this is completely different. So it is good for that. Let's move on to the success this fall. I've got a list. I'm going to look at it. Women's cross country, GAC champions just last week. Women's soccer currently tied for first place as we record this. Volleyball is in position to make the GAC tournament in November. Football is in first place in the GAC as we record this. Men's swimming ranked number 20 in the nation. Wrestling begins the season ranked number 25 in the nation. A lot of success from your coaches and student athletes this fall.
I can't say enough about our staff and what they do and how they recruit, and the work and the hours and time, the blood, the sweat, the tears that they put into it over the years of how many hours that they've all put in recruiting, coaching, fundraising, developing relationships, and it takes time. It takes a lot of time, and so I think we're seeing some of the fruit of that. And you mentioned it. I mean, so happy for our women's cross country team and their championship. And but like you said, we've got a lot of good things coming up here shortly with the end of the fall schedule, and we're in that transition time to your winter schedule, and I am excited about our Coach Crutchmer with wrestling. He's excited as I've seen him, and I think he's got a good crew there. Men's and women's basketball gets started next week, and then of course, as you mentioned, swimming, and the men are swimming well and the women are swimming well, so it's really a good time. But you gotta go from this event to that event to the next event. I know you understand that as well as any.
Absolutely. One of the I wanted to touch on all those, but one of the big reasons I wanted to talk to you now is involves football postseason. You serve on the NCAA National Football Committee for Division II, and so I think obviously Ouachita's made the playoffs several years, but the process and how that happens as more and more people see through social media the success and start paying attention towards the end. And I think part of it is probably because you see a national poll where a team's ranked 3rd or 5th or something like that. I want you to help us understand that process. You can be number 1 in a national poll, and it means nothing, and you can not make the playoffs. So help us understand some of the process and how that works, and the regional ranking system. I guess we can start by understanding our regions. Ouachita in Super Region 3. Yeah,
we're in Super Region 3, and as you mentioned, being on this committee, it's my second stint on it. I was served on it back in the early 2000s when we didn't have computers to look at, and all of the websites, and we did everything by hand, and so it's a lot different now. We have all of these formulas and everything, but I think you mentioned Super Region 3. There's 4 super regions in Division II football. Super Region 1 is in the northeast part of the country, and 4 conferences up there. Super Region 2 is the southeast part of the country. It's got the South Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, the SAC, South Atlantic Conference. You've got the GSC, the conference we used to be in, and then you got a lot of independents there. And then Super Region 3 is our region, and that encompasses our conference, Great American Conference, MIAA, the GLIAC, the Great Lakes Great Lakes Intercollegiate Athletic Conference, and then the GLVC, the Great Lakes Valley Conference, and that's 4 conferences. That's pretty much standard. And then Super Region 4 is the rest of the country, and it's vast because it goes all the way to Oregon and Washington and the RMAC conference in between, all the way down to Texas with the Lone Star Conference. So that's your 4 super regions. First thing I would tell fans is don't pay attention to all those other polls. The Division II AFCA poll, the D2football.com poll, which is weighted anyway because those guys that run that are very familiar with a certain conference. It's okay to look at those and see that, but it means nothing when it comes to the playoffs because the committee that I sit on, where there's 8 of us, there's 2 from each super region, and we chair it, and then we have a RAC committee, regional advisory committee, that we all get together. We analyze the numbers, look at the numbers, and then we select, and we all vote, and we rank, and then that's when you release those rankings, and that's how you come up. The regionalization is for selection of the teams that make the playoffs.
And so a team finishes in the top 10 in the regional. They list 10 teams, each regional ranking. The one that just came out this week, the first regional ranking, is just alphabetical.
Right.
Next week, as we record this, the week of on October 29th, 30th, that ranking on next Monday, November
the 3rd, on the 4th. Well, on the 4th of November.
4th of November will be the first numerical ranking.
Correct.
And so the top 7 from each region end up making the playoffs, unless there's an earned access. And help us understand what we're looking for. Help us understand what we're looking for in that 1 through 10.
Well, that one and the thing is, you see 10 teams, and they're always going to show 10 teams. This week it was alphabetical order. Next week it'll be numerical on how the vote comes out. And you mentioned earned access, and I mentioned 4 conferences in each super region. And what earned access? There's no AQ in football right now. Now we have legislation on the docket to go to AQ.
Right.
Some of us are against it, meaning every conference champion would get a playoff bid.
Right.
There's some of us that are against that because we would say if you'll get us to 32 in the playoffs, then we'll say okay, do the AQ. But with 28, we think that there are some teams that get bumped that shouldn't get bumped because of conference team. But you have to be ranked in the top 9 to go to 7. You can't be 10 or not even in the top 10 to do that. You have to be at least 9 or above, and that has and could happen in some conferences, in some regions. I mean,
so what that would look like if a conference champion if a conference champion is the only team ranked in the top 10 in their region, if they're number 9, they're going to get one of those spots.
They're going to get the 7th spot.
Right.
They're going to get it. Now, if they're 7 or up,
they're in anyway.
They're in it anyway. Yep. But if they're 8 or 9, and they're the conference champion, they get earned access, and whoever that 7 team is, they're out.
Right. Help us understand some of the criteria. Teams may look at, we're undefeated. This team's got 2 or 3 losses. What are some of the criteria that they look at? I've got some of those written down: record, strength of schedule, in-region percentage, and things like that.
Well, you just touched on them. They're looking at your overall record. They're looking at your Division II record. They're looking at your strength of schedule, and things that affect that is your in-conference play, your out of conference in region play is very helpful when it comes to selecting. Now we don't have that because we're a closed schedule because we have 12 schools, we have 11 games. Right. But I'll take that because we have a schedule. Other schools would take it too, but I'll give you an example. There's a team in Kansas that they've played a really good non-conference in-region schedule and won a game that's huge for them. That's going to help them. But so you look at that, then you look at the strength of your opponent's schedule. You look at your record against 500 teams and above. These are all categories that we're looking at. We're not counting columns, but those are all things. And then there's a thing called KPI. That's a new thing that they use with Division II basketball, baseball, even Division I stuff. That's really it's evaluating your record and your opponent's records, and it digs deep into it. I have an opinion on that. I think we're on the cusp of not having enough contests to really put a lot of weight on that, especially right now. We might in a couple of more weeks, but it's really more designed for the sports with 30 games or 56 baseball games or 50 softball games or whatever the case may be.
When you look at a conference like the GAC that just plays, the strength of schedule is going to end up being
everybody's going to be
500
so
because
it's all
of
500.
the record. Does that factor, or how does that factor in to others or not?
We know that,
right?
So we know that, but what makes it tough is that you're having to compare against another team from another conference that's played outside, and so their numbers might be a little better, from that strength of schedule. But it still comes down to your record, your Division II record, your head-to-head competition, your record against good teams, and stuff like that.
As we go through the final 3 weeks of the season, weeks 9, 10, and 11, obviously if a team wins, they're helping their own cause. When you get to that final Sunday, November 17th, the Sunday after the last day, the bracket will come out. The 7 teams for each region or make up the teams from Super Region 3. Team 1 gets a bye into the next week, and the other teams play each other. What can a team, if a fan is trying to figure out, are we on the bubble? That happens with Division I basketball.
Yeah.
What should they be looking for over the last 3? Or if you're in a position like Ouachita or Harding or Grand Valley or some of these teams with 1 loss or no losses. Ouachita's the only team in the region with no losses right now. What do they be looking at?
I think you want to you can look at the rankings, and you can see records, and of course there's a lot of fans out there that they get on.
Absolutely.
They get on everything they can to look to see what a school's record is, their strength of schedule, and they might look at a lot of things that we don't even look at. But I think the things they need to watch is they need to watch head-to-head competition. They need to results against common opponents. And if you don't have any of that, then you got to go with the strength of schedule, your overall record, your Division II record, because if it's not a Division II game, it's not counting.
Right.
And we've done a real good job there of schools not playing many non-Division II games, and so I think they watch that, and then but it can fluctuate from week 10 to week 11 or week 9 to week 10 with just one win. And because you may have an opponent that continues to win, and their strength of schedule, their record's better, which helps if you beat them.
Right.
And vice versa, it doesn't help you if their record's not any good.
Right. And fans right now, and I would think next, for instance, Ouachita strength of schedule is going to end up 500.
It is.
But right now it may be above 500.
It is.
And it's going to, when you play a team that's under 500, it's going to hurt you. So. Yeah. How do you factor that in right now? The strength of schedule is not going to be where it is at the end of the season, and so you just kind of have to wait it out.
And you have to project,
right?
And quite honestly, if we would have ranked by numbers yesterday, it was going to be crazy because
I bet.
You have about 5 one-loss teams there. If you look at that list in our region, there's there may be 6 or 7 one-loss teams, and then two-loss teams. I know there's one 2-loss team there with Southern Arkansas, and but the good thing is, and we talked about this yesterday on the phone, there's a lot of matchups still to come,
right?
And within those, and there's some schools there that are going to play each other before the end of the season, and that'll shake things out.
With having conferences in the same region, is there an attempt to try to avoid conference rematches?
That's a good question, Chris, and this is one of the things.
It's not, and I'm not just thinking Great American, but you've also got.
We had last year. We had Ferris
Grand
and
Valley,
and we've had it to where they play the first week coming right out of the season, and. So one of the things on our committee that we're trying to really do, and I think the NCAA has given us a little leadway to do this, is to try to avoid first-round in-conference matchups. Right. And the other thing is, if we can, to maybe even go across region lines for matchups.
Right.
And you got to have a plan there. And part of me wants to. We don't seed nationally, but the division. the FCS, they seed like the top 16, and then they go from there. Mm-hmm. And I would love to use the regionalizations for selection.
Right.
And then, and I'm going to do this in my mind. I'm going to try to in my mind. It's hard to go across regions, but try to seed 16, but then try to get the best, what I think are the best teams to host, and maybe have a team that's in Super Region 2 go to a team in Super Region 1 and vice versa, and see if we can get some cross.
Because there's some travel considerations.
Well, travel,
as well.
You know, and there's also some in those two regions where, you know, like for Ferris and Grand Valley State that probably will be in the playoffs. There's some better ways to travel than to bring them to Arkansas, but they can go over to Pennsylvania and play, and it's a couple of 100 miles, you know. So that's going to be our challenge as a committee to see if we can work some of that stuff out.
Well, we're doing this because obviously Ouachita's 8-0 and in the middle of this. I do remember almost 20 years ago when you were on this committee, because when I was SID working with you, and I remember saying this would be so fun to have to figure out if we were in the mix. Mm-hmm. And we weren't at that time.
We weren't.
Coach Knight was just building, and now he's built it and trying to make another playoff appearance, and it's a little bit more fun.
And it's interesting you say that, because, you know, even though I served only 4 years back in 2002, 3, 4, and 5, and 6, I stayed involved with Division II, and especially with the playoffs of running playoff games, and I haven't missed a national championship since 2002. So every time I'd go, especially there in the late 2000s and early 2010s, I'd come back and I'd tell Coach, I said, Coach, we're close.
Right.
Everybody I'm seeing and where you are with your program, and now we're there.
Right.
And so now we're knocking on that door, and we're trying to take the next step.
There you go. Coach Sharp, thanks for coming in. Appreciate you spending your time.
Appreciate it.
All right.